Hi everyone, my name is Bev, and today I'm going to be perusing the 100 most notable books of 2020 according to the New York Times. So imagine your TBR topped up with fresh, new, exciting reads, or think about the look on the face of the bookworm from your holiday nice list when they unwrap a very hot, very in title from you. That might be what this whole list is all about. I trust the New York Times, but 100 books is a hefty collection, so I thought I would comb through it today and make a video so that we could do it together. Maybe it'll be less daunting if you tackle it with a buddy. So I've actually only read 2 of the books on this list, so I can speak to those, but as for everything else, I will share with you what I do know, my gut reaction, and whether I think this is a pass, a someday TBR, a hot burning read that I must get to ASAP. We'll see what I get into. So I am just gonna dive right on in. So I just wanna say, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, I would really appreciate it. And yeah, let's go. Hi, hello. Eddie just came in from his walk and he wants to hang around, so don't mind his tip-tapping. Oh, Marianne from Ireland says 3 poetry books. Seriously? Okay, so a lack of poetry here. I'm not the biggest poetry reader, so maybe a narrowed down list will actually work really well for me. Kelsey from Sacramento. Are there no notable children's books, young adult books, graphic novels, or genre novels this year? This list ignores the most well-read categories of fiction again. Okay, harsh words. Yeah, it seems like that's just not what New York Times is going to recommend to us this year. Or maybe any year. Does the New York Times ever really cover genre fiction? I'm not totally sure, but I get the sense that it's a no. Michelle from Toronto. Very nice to see a number of translated fictions on this list. Okay, I like that. That's something that I am interested in. So one of my goals for 2021 is to find a book that is translated from a language that I've never read a translation from before. So maybe there's something cool there. J. David from New Mexico. Although I am glad short story writer Samantha Schweblin now has a novel, it is sad to see so little attention paid to short stories and no attention paid to the essay. I know, most Americans just do not care for these forms. Both are way too intellectual for most Americans. Excuse me, J. David. I am not a huge fan of short stories. It's just not something that has grabbed me. I've tried a lot of short story collections in the past. I'm sure I will try more, but yeah, short story is just not my thing. So maybe the New York Times list is for me. Sharon from LA. No one is ever satisfied. Ain't that the truth, Sharon? Okay, let's just take a look at the books. Yeah, let's just go from smallest to largest genre. Smallest one, consisting of 1 book, is short stories. So we've got Why I Don't Write and Other Stories by Susan Minot. Yeah, so like I said, I'm not a big short story person, and this description is not selling it for me. The stories in this collection, Minot's first since 1989, are concerned with love, death, estrangement, loss, and memory, which means that they are concerned with time itself. Sounds a little bit bland, I have to say. I don't think this one's gonna make the old TBR. Let's move it on up to poetry. Like one of the comments said, only 3 poetry collections, so interesting. I've actually never read a poetry collection. I've read some poetry, but only for school. So I've never tried to read it just for my own entertainment. I don't even know if I know how. So let's see if any of these pique my interest. We've got Feed by Tommy Pico, Felon Poems by Reginald Dwayne Betts, and Obit Poems by Victoria Chang. Feed lets sympathetic readers pretend to live for almost 80 pages inside Pico's charismatic, uneasy mind. It's got a little blurb on the cover from Tommy Orange. Funny, irreverent, profound. Okay. Felon seems really interesting in that it's about his experience in the prison industrial complex, so that could actually be really cool. And then in Victoria Chang's poem collection, Obit, this looks really depressing. This is exploring her father's illness and her mother's death, treating mortality as a constantly shifting enigma. I don't know if I'm really up for my first poetry collection really being so about grief, but I think I will add the other 2 to my TBR, so let me just go ahead and do that now. Now I think as far as the other filters, we've got fiction, memoir, and nonfiction. Now I believe that all of the memoir is housed inside of nonfiction as well. So I'm just gonna go through nonfiction and then fiction, we'll skip memoir because we're gonna get it in nonfiction. The Beauty in Breaking, a memoir by Michelle Harper. When Harper was a teenager, she drove her brother to the hospital to get treated for a bite her father had inflicted. There, she glimpsed a world she wanted to join. The Beauty in Breaking is her memoir of becoming an emergency room physician. It's also a profound statement on the inequities in medical care today. Okay, cool. Becoming Wild, How Animal Cultures Raise Families, Create Beauty, and Achieve Peace by Carl Safina. So Safina is an ecologist and an author of many books about animal behavior, and he delves into the world of chimpanzees, sperm whales, and macaws to make a convincing argument that animals learn from one another and pass down culture in a way that will feel very familiar to us. I really love learning about animal behavior, but I think sometimes we make too many parallels between animal behavior and human behavior that just are kind of weak in their connection. So I don't know, maybe I'll have to read a little bit more about this one before I decide if I want to go for it. The Biggest Bluff, How I Learned to Pay Attention, Master Myself, and Win by Maria Konnikova. Konnikova is a writer for The New Yorker with a PhD in psychology. She decided to study poker for its interplay between luck and determination. This is an account of her journey, which took her much further into the world of high-stakes gambling than she ever imagined. I don't know how really into high-stakes gambling stories I really am, but The Beauty in Breaking, I think I will go ahead and add. Oh. And would you look at that? It's already on my TBR. Great. Apparently I heard about this before. We've got Black Wave, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the 40-year rivalry that unraveled culture, religion, and collective memory in the Middle East by Kim Gattas. A Lebanese-born journalist and scholar takes a sweeping look at the unrest in the Middle East, arguing that much of it is the result of competition between Saudi Arabia and Iran. The Book of Eels, Our Enduring Fascination with the Most Mysterious Creature in the Natural World by Patrick Svensson. Svensson follows those slithery beings in every direction they take him, producing a book that moves from Aristotle to Freud to the fishing trips of his youth. Okay, that actually sounds really lovely. What a fun way to frame a memoir. Okay, I'm into that. Then we've got Burning Down the House, Newt Gingrich, The Fall of a Speaker and the Rise of the New Republican Party by Julian E. Zelizer. As Zelizer recounts, Gingrich brought a new slash and burn style to Congress in the late 1980s that disrupted old ways and led to repeated Republican successes. That actually sounds fascinating. I would love to know more about the evolution of modern politics in the US. It's honestly baffling. So, yeah, actually that could be really great. I will add both of those. Okay, we've got Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. The Pulitzer-winning author advances a sweeping argument for regarding American racial bias through the lens of caste. Drawing analogies with the social orders of modern India and Nazi Germany, she frames barriers to equality in a provocative new light. This is a book that I've seen a lot of people really get into this year and had only great things to say, so I'm definitely intrigued. I will 100% be adding this one to my list. The Dead Are Arising, The Life of Malcolm X by Les Payne and Tamara Payne. 30 years in the making and encompassing hundreds of original interviews, this magisterial biography of Malcolm X was completed by Les Payne's daughter after his death in 2018. Its strengths lie in its finely shaded, penetrating portrait of the Black activist and thinker whose legacy continues to find fresh resonance today. I would absolutely love to read a biography on Malcolm X. I suspect that there are several, so I think I would probably want to kind of weigh all of the different ones that are out there and see kind of which one is going to speak to me the most. So TBD on that one. Deaths of Despair and the Future of Capitalism by Anne Case and Angus Deaton. This highly important book examines the pain and despair among white blue-collar workers and suggests that the hopelessness that they are experiencing may eventually extend to the entire American workforce. This is something that 100% concerns me. I definitely want to know more about maybe what to expect or what to brace for in the next several decades of my life. You know, a lot of people, myself included, grew up believing that we were entitled to a nice life. An adjustment of expectations is in order. I don't think it's going to be an uplifting read, but maybe an important one. Desert Notebooks, A Roadmap for the End of Time by Ben Ehrenreich. This is a journal-like description of the author's life in desert America in a cabin near Joshua Tree National Park and his move to Las Vegas, where his world shrinks. Months into lockdown, it feels creepily prescient. We are all in the desert now. I don't really know what that means. A Dominant Character, The Radical Science and Restless Politics of J.B.S. Haldane by Samanth Subramanian. Haldane is a British biologist and ardent communist who helped synthesize Darwinian evolution with Mendelian genetics. He's once as famous as Einstein. Subramanian's elegant biography doubles as a timely allegory of the fraught relationship between science and politics. That's kind of interesting. I'm not sure what that's trying to say about the relationship between science and politics. I like to think that a synthesis of science and politics could only be a good thing, but then again, Maybe it's actually very dark. The Dragons, the Giant, the Women, a memoir by Wei to Moore. Following her magical realist debut novel, She Would Be King, Moore's immersive, exhilarating memoir also has elements of the fantastical, framed by her family's harrowing escape from civil war in Liberia. I wonder if some of the elements of magical realism are going to be injected into the novel as well. That could be really cool. Eat the Buddha, Life and Death in a Tibetan Town by Barbara Demick. Demick tells a decades-long story about Ngaba, a small Sichuan town that has become the center of resistance to Chinese authority. Lately, this activism has taken the form of self-immolation, an act of desperation, as Demick's panoramic reporting comprehensively shows. I'm not sure if I am up for reading a novel about self-immolation. The End of Everything, Astrophysically Speaking, by Katie Mack. Many books have been written about the creation of the universe 13.8 billion years ago, but Mack, a theoretical cosmologist, is interested in how it all ends. She guides us along a cosmic timeline studded with scientific esoterica and mystery. I'll be honest, I don't know how interested I am in actually reading a book about astrophysics. I know it's a huge interest for many people. It is fascinating to me, but I'm not sure that a book is really the media for me to take in that type of content. I think that I'm so far away from being able to understand it that I do need like that visual element, so maybe I'll watch a program. Exercise of Power, American Failures, Successes, and a New Path Forward in the Post-Cold War World by Robert M. Gates. With decades of experience at the highest levels of government, Gates presents a critique of past mistakes in American foreign policy and provides a guide for policymakers in the future. It's not selling it to me. Fallout, The Hiroshima Cover-Up and the Reporter Who Revealed It to the World by Leslie M. Bloom. For months after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Americans were told little about the devastating effects on survivors. Bloom's magisterial account of how John Hershey broke the story in The New Yorker is also a warning about the ever-present dangers of nuclear war. I really like that this is about the cover-up and the reveal through reporting. It reminds me of the movie Spotlight, which I really loved, so I think this is definitely a kind of story that I could get into. The Hard Hat Riot, Nixon, New York City, and the Dawn of the White Working Class Revolution by David Paul Kuhn. Kuhn highlights one day, May 8th, 1970, when blue-collar workers went on a rampage against anti-war protesters, noting that the country's politics have never been the same. Blue-collar workers versus anti-war protesters. Certainly will be some parallels to America today. Hidden Valley Road, Inside the Mind of an American Family by Robert Kolker. It reads like a Greek tragedy. 6 of the Galvins' 12 children developed schizophrenia. This book is much more than a narrative of despair, though. Its most compelling chapters involve the scientists who studied the family, looking for genetic clues about the origins of this unfathomable disease. Of course, I enjoy a devastating story, but also like a scientific mystery, I think could be really great. Yeah. Okay, very interested in Hidden Valley Road. Let's add that to the old list. I think I need to only add things to the list that I want to read like right away or very soon, because otherwise we're going to get into unreasonable territory here. So I'm going to try and be a little bit selective. Okay, The Inevitability of Tragedy, Henry Kissinger and His World by Barry Gevin. In this magisterial account, Gevin, a longtime editor of the Book Review, traces the historical and philosophical roots of Kissinger's famous realism, situating him in the context of Hannah Arendt and a cohort of other Jewish intellectuals who escaped Nazi Germany. I'll be totally honest, I really don't know a lot about Henry Kissinger. Maybe I need to read the man's Wikipedia page before I commit to a biography. Just Us, An American Conversation by Claudia Rankin. It's a combination of essays, poetry, and visual art to interrogate the ways race haunts her imagination and America's. Fantasies cost lives, she writes. I'm not sure if I totally get what this book is about, to be totally honest. I'll read a little more about it. The Loneliness of the Long-Distance Cartoonist by Adrienne Tomine. Tomine, now considered a master of the graphical novel form, returns in an autobiographical mode in a book that lets vent the rage and fragility that are always just beneath the surface of his pristine drawings. The Man Who Ran Washington, The Life and Times of James A. Baker III by Peter Baker and Susan Glasser. This fascinating biography of the former Secretary of State and consummate insider, who was once called the most important unelected official since World War II, reveals both Baker's accomplishments and the compromises he had to make. Memorial Drive, a Memoir by Natasha Trethewey. At the center of Trethewey's memoir is the wrenching story of her mother's murder by her ex-husband in 1985. But this haunting elegy by the Pulitzer Prize-winning poet is also a work of great beauty and tenderness and atmospheric evocation of innocence and loss. I think this could actually be really interesting to read after reading some of the author's poetry, since she is a Pulitzer Prize-winning poet. So maybe I will start there. 97,196 Words, Essays by Emmanuel Carrère. This collection of short pieces by an author widely considered to be France's leading nonfiction writer underscores Carrère's incisive style and moral stance. Whether he's writing about a murderer or a movie star, he's also investigating himself, part of a deeply empathetic quest to understand our species. I'll be honest, this does sound really interesting, but I know myself, I know I don't love a short story. I don't know if I'm gonna love an essay collection. Notes on a Silencing, a memoir by Lacey Crawford. This devastating and erudite memoir chronicles the author's experiences of sexual assault while she was a student at St. Paul's, an elite boarding school in Concord, New Hampshire, followed by a decades-long cover-up at the hands of an esteemed institution with money, power, and connections, and her own complicated journey of recovery. Overground Railroad, The Green Book and the Roots of Black Travel in America by Candace E. Taylor. Taylor, a cultural documentarian, traveled to thousands of sites mentioned in the Green Book, the essential guidebook for Black travelers braving American roads during Jim Crow. Highlighting threats such travelers faced, her lively illustrated history is mindful of the ongoing struggle for Black social mobility today. I only recently learned about the Green Book within the last couple of years, so I'm sure so many of the things that Black travelers were cautioned against back during Jim Crow are still in place today. I think that this would actually be a very interesting read. Owls of the Eastern Ice, A Quest to Find and Save the World's Largest Owl by Jonathan C. Slott. Slott is a wildlife biologist with a singular mission to conserve an elusive and enormous raptor in the eastern wilds of Russia. This book is an ode to the rigors and pleasures of fieldwork in hard conditions. I don't know why one book about preserving one owl just strikes me as a little bit comical, but I bet I would really like it, actually. Like, I laugh, but at the same time I really want to read it. I'm gonna save this one. A Peculiar Indifference, The Neglected Toll of Violence on Black America. This essential book by a veteran legal scholar argues that the extraordinary violence against Black lives is a result of the nation's refusal to address the structural roots of the problem. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this is great. There are a lot of books on this same topic. I think I want to know a little bit more about what people think of Elliot Carey's take before I really dive in, but absolutely, I would 100% be interested in reading this one. A Pilgrimage to Eternity, From Canterbury to Rome in Search of a Faith by Timothy Egan. In his 9th book, the self-described lapsed but listening Irish Catholic travels 1,200 miles from Canterbury to Rome and tries to decide what he believes. If this book doesn't settle the question, it will at least fortify faith in scrupulous reporting and captivating storytelling. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm that interested in reading about an Irish Catholic's faith-based journey. A Promised Land by Barack Obama. The former president's memoir, the first of 2 volumes, is a pleasure to read. The prose gorgeous, the detail granular and vivid. From Southeast Asia to a forgotten school in South Carolina, he evokes the sense of place with a light but sure hand. His focus is more political than personal, but when he does write about his family, it is with a beauty close to nostalgia. Yeah, 100%. This one's already on the TBR. We know. The Quiet Americans, 4 CIA Spies at the Dawn of the Cold War, A Tragedy in 3 Acts by Scott Anderson. Covering the years 1944 to 1956, Anderson's enthralling history of the early years of the Cold War follows 4 CIA operatives as their initial idealism eventually turns into betrayal and disillusionment, fueled by creeping right-wing hysteria at home and cynical maneuvering abroad. I love a spy story, not to mention a nonfiction spy story, so that sounds awesome. Reaganland, America's Right Turn, 1976 to 1980 by Rick Perlstein. More than a book about Ronald Reagan, the conclusion of Perlstein's 4-volume saga on the rise of conservatism in America is absorbing political and social history, with sharp insights into the human quirks and foibles that were so much a part of the late 1970s. Yeah, I don't know if I really want to get into something that is the conclusion of a 4-part saga. Even though the rise of conservatism is something that I really do want to read more about, I think my earlier choice is probably going to be what's right for me. The Saddest Words, William Faulkner's Civil War by Michael Gora. Gora's complex and thought-provoking meditation on Faulkner is rich in insight, making the case for the novelist's literary achievement and his historical value, as an unparalleled chronicler of slavery's aftermath and its damage to America's psyche. This could be interesting, but again, I don't know a lot about the subject. I'm not a huge William Faulkner person. I know I tried to read As I Lay Dying when I was in high school, and I don't remember anything about it. Yeah, probably not going to be the one for me. The Selected Letters of Ralph Ellison, edited by John F. Callahan and Mark C. Connor. In his lifetime, Ellison's only novel was the masterpiece Invisible Man, but for 6 decades he corresponded with some of the greatest writers of his day. This magnificent collection captured his wit, style, ambition, and personal travels, as well as his powerful insights into Black artistic expression. Okay, I had no idea that Ralph Ellison only wrote The Invisible Man. I do also really want to read an epistolary novel, so something that is written in letters. I don't know if this really counts because it's a nonfiction collection of letters, but just the same, it interests me for that reason, so that is up there. Shakespeare in a Divided America, What His Plays Tell Us About Our Past and Our Future by James Shapiro. Shapiro's long created Shakespeare treats for the common reader, but this time he outdoes himself. From John Quincy Adams' racist attacks on Othello to the notorious Trump as Julius Caesar Central Park production in 2017, he reminds us how divided we've been since our very beginnings, with the historical tragical constantly muscling out the pastoral comical. I have no idea what to expect with this, but it sounds very entertaining, so that's a big maybe. The Sirens of Mars, Searching for Life on Another World by Sarah Stewart Johnson. Johnson, a Georgetown planetary scientist, oscillates between a history of Mars science and an account of her own journey seeking sparks of life in the immensity. In prose that swirls with lyrical wonder, she recalls formative moments in her life and career. Okay, more astronomy. Like I said, maybe not my favorite topic, so I think I'll pass on that one. Soul Full of Coal Dust, A Fight for Breath and Justice in Appalachia by Chris Hamby. Hamby powerfully recounts two stories, both miserable. The effect that working in a coal mine has had on the health of miners, and the decades-long battle for federal help to force companies to pay for their medical care. The Splendid and the Vile, a saga of Churchill, family, and defiance during the Blitz by Eric Larson. Larson's account of Winston Churchill's leadership during the 12 turbulent months from May 1940 to May 1941, when Britain stood alone and on the brink of defeat, is fresh, fast, and deeply moving. So I have read The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson, and his other novel, Dead Wake, about the Lusitania, is also on my TBR, but for whatever reason, I don't know, Churchill doesn't interest me a whole heck of a lot, so I think I might try and read Dead Wake before I get on to The Splendid and the Vile. The Third Rainbow Girl, The Long Life of a Double Murder in Appalachia by Emma Copley Eisenberg. Decades after two young women were murdered there, a small town continues to grapple with the crime. This evocative and elegantly paced examination of the murders takes a prism-like view. That's a maybe. I mean, true crime, definitely something that interests me. I like a good crime novel, but this little blurb didn't really sell it for me. This Is All I Got, A New Mother's Search for Home by Lauren Sandler. In 2015, Sandler was volunteering at a homeless shelter when she met Camila, a pregnant resident who was determined to find a permanent, safe place to raise her child. This book charts her path through red tape, educational challenges, family crises, and moments of joy amid unimaginable struggle. This is another one where the blurb just really isn't doing it for me. I think I need a few more recommendations before I really add this one. Uncanny Valley, a memoir by Anna Wiener. At 25, Wiener left a low-paying publishing job and wound up in San Francisco, the hyper-competitive, male-dominated, morally obtuse world of tech startups. Her splendid memoir, stylish and unsparing, is a vital reckoning with an industry awash in self-delusion. So Uncanny Valley is a book that I have actually read a lot of reviews of. I don't know, nobody seems to really love it that much. There's always kind of something off to say about it, so I don't know. If you've read it and you loved it, please sell it to me in the comments. I'm not sold. The Undocumented Americans by Carla Corneo Villavicencio. Corneo Villavicencio is one of the first undocumented students to be accepted into Harvard University. In her captivating and evocative first book, she tells the full story of what that means, relying not just on her own experience, but on interviews with immigrants across the country. So finally, we arrive at a book that I have read. This one I read in like late September, early October, and I realized like I forgot to talk about it in my like September wrap-up or October wrap-up. Whatever. I forgot to talk about it. I thought that the author told a lot of these stories in a really fresh way. Her prose was very relatable, so her points were delivered really clearly. I felt like I really did understand what she was trying to say, and she told a variety of stories from all different parts of the United States. I thought that it was absolutely fantastic. I absolutely recommend it. Until the End of Time, Mind, Matter, and Our Search for Meaning in an Evolving Universe by Brian Greene. You humans share Greene's mastery of both the latest cosmological science and English prose. Here, the best-selling physicist takes our deepest mysteries, consciousness, creativity, and the end of time. That's a lot of cosmological science for this list. The Vapors, A Southern Family, The New York Mob, and the Rise and Fall of Hot Springs, America's Forgotten Capital of Vice by David Hill. Hill grew up in Hot Springs, Arkansas, decades after its 20th century heyday as the boozy, freewheeling hangout of choice for gamblers, mobsters, and crooked politicians. His book recreates the giddy era with a delightfully light touch and a focus on the nightclub of the title. Very cool. I've never heard of Hot Springs, Arkansas. I had no idea that there was a forgotten capital of vice in the US. Yeah, I'm absolutely interested because, yeah, news to me. Wagnerism, Art and Politics in the Shadow of Music by Alex Ross. With enormous intellectual range and subtle artistic judgment, Ross's history of ideas probes the nerve endings of Western society as they are mirrored in more than a century of reaction to Richard Wagner's oeuvre, from George Eliot to Apocalypse Now. Art and Politics in the Shadow of Music. It sounds like it could be interesting, but also like it could be incredibly dry. So maybe I need to read more about this one. I need this one sold to me a little bit more. War, How Conflict Shaped Us by Margaret Macmillan. This is a short book, but a rich one with a profound theme. Macmillan argues that war, fighting and killing, is so intimately bound up with what it means to be human that viewing it as an aberration misses the point. War has led to many of civilization's great disasters, but also to many of civilization's greatest achievements. Okay, the fact that this is short appeals to me, for sure, because when you don't know what you're getting into and you don't actually have like somebody that you trust telling you a little bit more about what's going on, there's only so much you can glean from a list. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in this topic, and a short book seems like a low barrier to entry. The Weirdest People in the World: How the West Became Psychologically Peculiar and Particularly Prosperous by Joseph Henrich. Henrich combines evidence from his own lab with the work of dozens of collaborators across multiple fields to make an ambitious case for the distinctiveness of Western psychology. I don't think I've actually read a book about psychology in a long time, so maybe this will scratch an itch for me. That sounds really cool. Who Gets In and Why? A Year Inside College Admissions by Jeffrey Salingo. Salingo challenges the facade of meritocracy in his absorbing examination of America's obsession with getting into college. Schools, he argues persuasively, are looking out for their own interests, not yours. This is definitely a topic I'm interested in. I think the value of college is maybe a little bit overblown. Certainly, like, the value of your education and your degree compared to what you pay for it. Yeah, there's definitely a disconnect there. Understanding a little bit more about that college admissions process and what colleges are really doing and what they're looking for and what this whole process is about. Yeah, sounds fascinating. It's not something that I know a lot about, but that I know a lot of people have a lot of feelings about. So it could be cool to be a little bit more educated on this topic. Okay, and finally, to the end of the nonfiction section. A Woman Like Her: The Story Behind the Honor Killing of a Social Media Star by Sanam Maher. This fascinating portrait of Pakistan's first big female internet sensation is also a skillfully reported account of a country in which conservative mores conflict with the pace of social change and in which women all too often pay the price. Wow, I had no idea that something like this happened. I know that honor killings happen and it's atrocious. I had no idea that somebody that had such a high profile, though, was the victim of an honor killing. That actually could be a very interesting story. And last on the list, Yellowbird: Oil, Murder, and a Woman's Search for Justice in Indian Country by Sierra Crane Murdoch. This painstakingly reported and beautifully written book, Murdoch's first, examines the effect of fracking on a North Dakota reservation through the eyes of a remarkable Native American woman who, determined to solve a murder related to the oil boom, exposes the greed and corruption that fueled it. Wow. We've got Native American stories, we've got fracking, we've got true crime, murder. This is a cool combination of topics. I think, yeah, I would absolutely love to read this. I'm gonna go ahead and add Yellowbird to my TBR now. Okay, so we've reached the end of the nonfiction section, and this has been going on. I'm not wearing a watch, that's just a thing I do. I think what I'll do is I will split this up into 2 different videos, and I'll tackle the fiction section next time we meet. While you wait, if you're looking for a blend of nonfiction and fiction recommendations, I highly suggest you take a look at the Indigenous Lit video that I did. I have some great recommendations for you from Indigenous authors. It is still Native American History Month in the US, so definitely check that one out if you haven't already. And yeah, hit me up in the comments. Let me know if any of these books were added to your TBR immediately, or if you've read some of these and I passed over some of the really awesome books that were on this list. All right, I appreciate you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next video.